The Hogwarts dungeons had always carried a damp, suffocating chill, the kind that coiled around the ankles and slithered into the bones. The corridors beneath the castle stretched endlessly, winding like ancient veins beneath the school, hidden from the curious eyes of students who never dared to venture too far. Tonight, Theodore Nott was one of the few who had no choice but to wander them. He wasn't meant to be here. That much he knew. But when a whisper low, urgent, promising, had reached his ears in the dead of night, something in him had stirred. A voice he hadn't heard in years, a name that hadn't been spoken aloud since the war ended. Regulus Black wasn't a fool. He had spent years burying his father's sins, distancing himself from the ghost that still lurked in the pure-blood circles. The war had taken its toll on the remnants of Slytherin's legacy, leaving boys like him walking a tightrope between survival and suspicion. Yet here he was, drawn into the very shadows he had tried to escape. As he pressed forward, the torches lining the stone walls flickered violently, as if something unseen had exhaled against the flame. The air was heavy with the scent of old parchment, damp earth, and something metallic, something too close to blood. His fingers ghosted over the ridges of the wall, tracing the ancient carvings of serpents and incantations long forgotten. Something was wrong. Deeply, impossibly wrong. The castle was ancient, and it carried many secrets, but this wasn't the usual dark magic that clung to Slytherin's halls. This was old, older than the wars, older than the House of Black itself. Nott turned a corner, then stopped. A figure stood ahead, draped in a cloak of deep green, face obscured by the flickering torchlight. Not a ghost, not an illusion, someone real. The voice, when it came, was soft yet edged with something sharp, something dangerous. "You should not have come." Nott's breath caught. It wasn't a voice he recognized, but the weight of the words pressed against his chest, suffocating in its familiarity. The kind of voice that carried old blood magic, the kind that made a man question whether the dead could still whisper. The torches crackled again, the flames shuddering as if recoiling from something unseen. The walls of the dungeon felt smaller now, the air thicker. A cold bead of sweat traced the back of Nott's neck. His instincts screamed at him to turn back, to leave whatever lay ahead undiscovered. But he didn't move. He had spent too many years running, from his past, from his name, from the shadow of his father's allegiance to the Dark Lord. Whatever truth lay hidden beneath Hogwarts, it was tied to his bloodline, to the history of the House of Black and those who had walked these halls long before him. His voice, when he finally spoke, came out quieter than he intended. "Who are you?" The torchlight caught a glimpse of the man's face. Pale, angular, his features carved with the unmistakable lines of the Black family. Not quite a ghost, not quite alive. The impossible truth settled into Nott's bones like ice. Regulus Arcturus Black had died at 17. Yet here he stood, his silver-gray eyes unreadable, as if he had never left the shadows at all. The torches dimmed to dying embers, plunging the corridor into near darkness. The silence stretched unbearably, thick as smoke pressing against Nott's ears like a deafening weight. His pulse roared in his skull, each heartbeat hammering like a warning. He took an involuntary step back, breath coming shallow, but the dungeon had changed. The walls seemed farther apart than they had been a moment ago, the ceiling higher, the torch brackets rusted and ancient, as if he had stepped into another time, another version of Hogwarts that shouldn't exist. A whisper slithered through the corridor, but it did not come from Regulus. It came from everywhere and nowhere, blood to blood, a price unpaid, a debt unfinished. Nott's skin prickled, his throat felt tight, his mind clawing at the words, trying to understand. This was not simply the ghost of Regulus Black. This was something older, something buried beneath history itself, something that recognized his lineage, his blood, and now it demanded something in return. He swallowed hard, his fingers curling into a fist, nails digging into his palm, to ground himself. "I didn't ask for this," he muttered, half to himself, half to the presence that had wrapped itself around the corridor like a living thing. The darkness stirred. The torches flickered again, revealing, just for a moment, a glimpse of something else standing behind Regulus. Something taller, twisted. Unmoving. Nott blinked, and it was gone. But the weight of its presence had not left. The war had ended, but the darkness never truly disappeared. It only lingered, waiting for those foolish enough to seek it out. And tonight, Theodore Nott realized he had come looking for something he was never meant to find. And now it had found him.